Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Greetings all. My name is Huda Al-Furqani, Director Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group at the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to our online Majlis, the Capitals Coalition's UAE Hub Majlis, as part of Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group digital platforms. We are hosting this session today with support of the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi and in partnership with our knowledge partners, the Capital Coalitions and Sustainability to Action. As a start and background, I would like to start by sharing a general information about Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group, ADSG, a partnership initiative established by the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi in 2008 to promote sustainability management and to help foster collaboration and implementation of enhanced sustainable business practices in Abu Dhabi. The past year marked a significant milestone for Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group. We celebrated the 15 years of dedicated action, innovation, dialogue, and collaboration with our members, partners, leading sustainability organization, further reinforcing our commitment to shaping a sustainable future. Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group is open to new members willing to practice and champion sustainability in Abu Dhabi. As many of you are aware, the world has recently witnessed the conclusion of COP28, crucial milestone in the global pursuit of sustainability. As part of the key announcements at COP28 in UAE, the phase out on fossil fuels calls on governments to accelerate that, specifically by tripling of renewable energy capacity globally by 2030. Speeding up efforts to reduce coal use and accelerating technologies such as carbon capture and storage, and the UAE pledge $150 million in new funding for water security solutions in support for at-risk communities during the UN Climate Summit at COP28. By 2050, water demand around the world is projected to increase by as much as a quarter, according to the World Resource Institute. A new funding like this is crucial for offering financial support to expand current solutions and develop innovative new ones. Integrating capitals into decision-making, one of the key discussion today, revolves around the integration of natural capital, social and produced capital into decision-making processes. I am honored and delighted to express our deepest gratitude for the invaluable collaboration we have shared with our partner, Capital Coalition, over the past years for their unwavering dedication, support, throughout our journey, driving meaningful change and shaping a more sustainable and resilient world. And looking forward, we are thrilled to collaborative partnership project that seeks to amplify our flagship natural, social, and human capital for businesses. Again, in partnership with Capital Coalition. This initiative aims to bridge gaps and foster synergies between various sectors, ensuring a more comprehensive and impactful approach to our shared objective. Um, Thank you all for being here today with us, and I look forward to the enlightening and constructive discussion. And what I would like, uh, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our great uh, speakers and to welcome them to the session. And now I would like to hand over you to our session moderator and our consultant, Sustainability to Action, to introduce the session today. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Huda, for the great introduction and for highlighting all the work that has already been taking place in the past few years with the Capitals Coalition, and also, more importantly, for pointing to the future around the flagship that we are working to collaborate on in the coming 12 to 24 months, to which we, of course, look to the members and stakeholders of the ADSG to actively engage on. So I would like to add my welcome, ladies and gentlemen, ADSG members, distinguished guests and esteemed participants. Welcome to this really exclusive online webinar where we're going to look at post-COP28 outcomes, which is really interesting. And not only that, but we're also going to get updates, top secret updates from the World Economic Forum that took place in Davos just in the last few days. And also we're going to look at the implication of these global events on sustainability and sustainable development, particularly from the perspective of integration into or of human, natural, social and produced capitals, and how this helps with integrating all of these capitals into decision-making processes. And I'm honored to be the facilitator, moderator for this session and to facilitate this really interesting conversation. My name is Sandra Anani, and I am the Director of Sustainability to Action. Sustainability to Action is very proud to also be the Capitals Coalition UAE hub. And if you'd like to learn more about the hub and to participate in activities to promote the Capitals approach, please do get in touch. We very much want to hear from you. As we try to collaborate more and to bring the understanding of the capitals and how that can transform your business to a more sustainable operation going forward. So the session today is going to be interactive. So I would really like you to be prepared that we're going to come to you, the audience, with questions, not just to the speakers. So please be prepared. We're also going to be recording this session. You may have noticed, and there was a comment in the chat, this session is recorded and we plan to publish it as a YouTube video later on. So that's just a little bit of context around the session today. We are also inviting you to give us feedback at the end. I would be very grateful if you can share with us how you thought the webinar went, what we can do to improve it in the future. So as we prepare to delve deeper into today's topics, we will also have an opportunity to go through a case study, which is really, really interesting. So I want you to just be prepared that there is a case study, and we're going to share the link in the chat for that case study as well. But it's about implementing a nature positive strategy with measurable targets. In any case, the case study will take us through the process of how this particular organization went through natural capital assessment, then it went through natural capital commitments, natural capital transformation, and then finally natural capital disclosure. What does that all mean? How did that work out for a major company, a big company? So I would encourage you to actively engage with the speakers through the chat. So there's the chat. Hopefully you can see the chat on your right. Feel free to write your questions there. There are going to be multiple opportunities for engagement, as I mentioned. So there's going to be, if you've got any questions, my colleague Joni is going to be pulling this information from the chat and sharing it with me so that I can put it to the speakers. So please do that. And then there will be a couple of points when I will ask you, the audience, direct questions, to which I hope you will be able to come back to us with some answers or to invite some commentary from the speakers. Right. So without any more delays, we're all here to hear from the Capitals Coalition, me more than anyone else almost, unashamedly. Without any further delay, let me introduce our distinguished speakers to you. With a lot of appreciation and gratitude from myself, our speakers will share with us their valuable insights and expertise. We have the eminent Mark Gough, the CEO of the Capitals Coalition, and Mark's illustrious career has been dedicated to fostering systemic collaborative approaches towards sustainability. With a wealth of experience in both private and public sector, Mark's leadership has been instrumental in driving impactful change. And then I will also introduce Louise. So joining him in today's discussion will be the accomplished Louise Amon. She is the Senior Manager at the Capitals Coalition, and Louise's expertise lies in education and food system transformation. She spent many years championing socio-ecologic transitions and fostering collaborations for sustainable landscapes. Her dedication to equipping individuals and institutions with tools for transformation is commendable. So I have introduced our two speakers for you today, and I am humbled to hand over to Mark now. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Louise. I hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Huda. And it's wonderful to be back here again, speaking with you all. As you know, I've been out to Abu Dhabi several times. We've run workshops. We've been doing a lot of work on this over the last 10 years. I did notice that there were some photos of me looking a lot younger earlier in these slides. I am getting a little older. I think we all are. But so is the Capitals approach as well. So is the movement that you're all a part of. I think that's really important to note that at this time, that we're actually getting to a pivot point. We started as a coalition back in 2012, actually, at the Rio +20 event. But since then, we've been creating this movement, and Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group has been a core part of that. One of the first to translate the materials, one of the first to start applying it, to do workshops. So I'm really pleased about this next phase that we're going into, with you also leading on this, particularly in the region, but also globally. I think where we are now is slightly different from where we thought we were going to be, probably. And that's a good thing. That means that we're actually listening. It means that we're reacting to a lot of the different influences that are around. We'll talk a little bit more about the COP process, the actual work that was just recently in Dubai, also about Davos and some of the other big meetings. But for me, I think there's been a change in the full ecosystem. We now have many more organizations over the last 2 to 3 years that have been established, Business for Nature, which is now looking to get or support all these organizations in developing nature strategies and making sure that we're advocating things such as the Global Biodiversity Framework, which came out of the Kunming-Montreal Agreement back in 2022, wasn't it? The end of 2022, where we had the agreement there that all of these countries are now going to, for example, in Target 15 of that agreement, they're going to be applying basically a capitals approach. So this, by 2030, all large businesses and multinationals will have to assess and disclose their risks, impacts, and dependencies. And that's at the basis of what we're talking about here with capitals. So we've got some top level support that organizations like Business for Nature have now started. We have organizations like Accounting for Sustainability who are also part of the coalition that we're holding here. And they're doing a lot of work. We're working with them very much now on some of the educational materials, some of the materials that Louise will talk about hopefully in a moment as well, the online training materials that we're producing, trying to help to educate and fill the skills and knowledge gap that is there. But I think one of the major things is that we now need to start moving into a period of actually doing, of embedding this in the work. We've spent some years now proving that it's possible. We've tried it out. We know that actually using the idea of a capital, not just financial capital, but also natural, social, and human capital. We know that when we actually use those all together, we have a much more holistic approach, that we make better decisions, not just for our organizations, for our businesses, but also for the planet as well. We make better financial capital if we manage our processes better, but we also protect, conserve natural capital. And actually what we should be doing is nature positive, producing more nature than we have at the moment. And also this social and human, building up the skills and knowledge. And then also when we're looking at the social, the trust in the institutions. So all of these things coming together at the moment means that we are at a pivot point. We're at a pivot point where we need to start doing, which is why this program we're kicking off today is so exciting, so interesting, because we're actually moving into that period of doing rather than the period of just trying to influence people. We're now actually going to start making those changes. Every decision that we make, whether that is on a personal level, whether that is in a work environment, whether that is at an international level, has to involve nature, has to involve all of those different pieces in the puzzle. It can't just be looking at the financials. We know that financials are really important, but if we just look at those, we're going to make poor decisions that will end up undermining those financials in the long term. So how can we bring all of this together? That's what we're going to be talking about here today. So I'm going to pass you over now to Louise.
Thank you, Mark, for this inspirational introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and it's a real pleasure to be with you in this webinar. I will now present a few words about who is the coalition and what we are doing, what we are promoting. Next slide, please. So, as Mark mentioned, we are a global collaboration. So we transform the way decisions are made globally, and we push forward the inclusion of the value of nature, people, and society in all decisions. And how we do that? Through collaboration, indeed. So we have more than 450 organizations that are part of our coalition. You can even become one if you want. And we use the infinity loop to understand the system we want to influence. And you can see that there are blue color, green, and orange, who are our perception of the role of different actors of the system. So business has a role, financial community has a role, and government has a role, and all together we can push for that transformation we all want to see. It's important to mention we have 17 capital hubs around the world, and we are glad that in UAE, Sustainability to Action, also in collaboration with ADSG and others, are really bringing those concepts to the ground. And we also published 2 international protocols in the past, so Natural Capital Protocol, but also the Human and Social Capital Protocol, recognized widely. And we recently published a white paper about how to integrate all the capital together. So yeah, stay in touch to ensure you know the latest that's coming around the protocol. If you can go to the next slide, I want just to share a bit what is the challenge that Mark was talking about. What is the challenge what we are all facing as humanity? I think we can just recognize that, yes, we are failing, unfortunately, to address the global challenge of nature loss, climate change, and rising inequality. And why? Because somewhere our economic system doesn't recognize our dependence on nature, people, and society. So currently, conventional measures of economic success do not give all information needed to thrive in today's complex world. For example, too often we deplete one form of capital, for example, natural capital. We need to build a city or a place, and so that's needed. We need to create, a built environment and remove nature somewhere. And then we treat the financial gain of such construction as profit. Oh yeah, great. But in fact, this creates also a net loss of value for nature and potentially for people who were depending on that ecosystem. So that's that shift that we want to support. If you can go to the next slide, please, that understanding of value and capital. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, wonderful. So capital traditionally has been thought only as money. right? Everybody understand capital like that usually. But for us, it describes any resource or asset that store and provide value to people. For example, a forest is a kind of asset who provide fresh water, right? Or fresh air, oxygen. So if we invest in capital, they continue to create value. But if we degrade them, if we degrade the forest, we erode the value, and maybe we won't have the water we depend on. So that's really that understanding that all capital are important that we want to foster. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I just want to mention quickly that in 21, important review led by the Professor Das Gupta, well recognized worldwide, establish a kind of account for where we are on the capital. And the challenge that there is an erosion. No, we can see produced capital, which is the economy as we know, is growing. Great, that's really positive, right? Human capital, so the skill and knowledge are also growing. That's amazing. But natural capital has been depleted. And as we know, there is no business on a dead planet. So we need to think about how to reverse that. If you can go to the next slide. I want to present a bit of the solution. What we see as ambition is that by 2030, the majority of business, financial institution, and government will include the value of all capital in their decision making. As this graph, the economy produced capital is embedded within human and social capital space, and that is embedded and sustained by natural capital. So this new behavior, this new attitude of including the capital in decision will deliver a fair, just, and more sustainable world. In other words, let's preserve and create value rather than eroding. And with those last words, Mark, back to you, maybe to present us a bit more about Davos and COP, and then I will deep dive into the case study. Thanks.
Thank you, Louise. So there's been a lot of events in the last few months. There's going to be even more this year. And I've just noticed that one of my colleagues, Martin Locke, is on the call as well here. It's great to see Martin. Martin comes from the Dutch government originally, and has been leading as executive director of the Capitals Coalition for several years now. But Martin's been particularly looking at this policy element. So I mentioned the Global Biodiversity Framework and how important was that. There's also going to be later this year in Colombia, we're going to be having the next COP16 before we get into COP28 on the climate things. There's also in the biodiversity sphere, we went to COP15, which was in Montreal. It's COP16 there, but is going to be in Colombia this year. And that's going to be an important point to actually start measuring how well people are picking up on the Global Biodiversity Framework. But at COP28, I'm sure all of you will be very familiar because it was in the same region as you're all based, that this was a significant event this last the end of last year. I was there with a team of colleagues. One of the biggest events that we've ever seen talking about the climate. Over 100,000 people, we think, that were involved in the conversation, but also not just within the actual conference center. I did many events outside in different hotels and places around Dubai. One of the things that we were talking about actually there, and we were spending a lot of time discussing, was the Value Commission, which we have been able to curate over the last year. This is a commission made up of those that create value factors, the numbers that you might use, those that actually collate it, those that actually use them, the businesses and the organizations that use these sort of numbers, and then also the regulators. And we're getting much more into that regulation space, hence the conversations at COP, etc. And in those conversations that we were having around the Value Commission, what we're actually doing now is the equivalent of what you may know from financial accounting. So in financial accounts, we might have numbers such as EBITDA. So EBITDA is all of the taxes and all of those sort of things. And that number appears in the accounts and is thought to be consistent, but is different in every organization, different taxes added, different benefits included. So what we're doing is we're writing the equivalent that's in the financial notes. We're writing those equivalent things for sustainability, for impact, so that when you make a statement about the impact that you have, you'll be able to include also that work as well. The UN SEER is progressing really, really fast as well. There's lots of work going on there. Europe by 2027 We'll have all countries reporting against the UN system of environmental economic accounts. Just notice that in the notes there. So these system of environmental economic accounts is being applied all around the world. It was made into a standard in 2021. That was also discussed quite a lot at COP21. Sorry, COP28 as well. Going back a little bit there, COP21. Some of the other things that were really important, I think, there is that nature was much more strongly on the agenda. This was the COP that actually started to bring together much more clearly the conversation around nature and climate. And we saw that coming through in the conversations about food security, which were there, around health, around all of these other issues where nature and climate need to be seen of as a whole. And I think a lot of the conversations we were involved with also as hosts, one of the hosts of the Nature Pavilion was important. We're already talking about COP29 at the moment, and there's many bodies coming together more around the standardization. So what I was saying in the introduction there about how we're moving into the embedding phase now, it's all about trying to make sure there's a consistency in the way that we do things. So whereas 3 or 4 years ago, I might have been asked, what should I do? You know, shall I do a capitals approach? How do I do it? Now we're being asked, now that I'm doing a little bit of that, is it good enough? Am I doing the right thing with this? Am I doing it well? That's the question that's being asked. And I think in COP28, that really came to the fore with some of the organizations looking at that standardization of these processes, trying to embed it once again. We all knew from Paris in 2015 that the pathway was going to be 8 to 9 years. We all knew that at the time, I think, to actually turn some of those conversations into action. Well, we're getting to that point now. That's why we have to be moving into the action phase of what we're doing. That was it for the COP at the moment. There's plenty more things. I'm sure you heard many of the announcements, some really big announcements. As Huda was saying at the beginning there, a really important one about the actual direction of phasing out and the work that's going to be doing the transition away from fossil fuels. If we can just go on to Davos now, which is also, it's a wonderful way to start the year. You get a lot of people turning up to discuss all of the different partnerships. Now, you don't tend to, with Davos, actually get many outputs from it. So it's not like the COPs where you will have announcements and you'll have things that you can build upon, but it does build a lot of relationships. One of the things I've noticed at the COPs in the last few years is that it started turning more into a place where conversations do lead to deals. There are conversations about problems and solutions at the COP. Well, Davos is all about that. It's all about what's the problem, where's the solution, not so much about the big announcements. One of the things here that I think is fascinating, I've been going to Davos now for, I think it's 7 or 8 years, is on the main stage, we have only ever had one event that was talking about the economics of nature and people. This year, we had 8. There were 8 events on the main stage, which shows once again that this is becoming mainstream, that actually people are realizing that actually this isn't just a nice to have. With the global biodiversity framework, as I mentioned, you know, now making it requirements for companies in 2030, this is also becoming mainstream in the Davos conversation as well. So all of those big businesses from around the world, and I'm sure you had some of your colleagues and leaders in Davos as well, are now starting to look at this as a really essential part of what we are doing. And to bring that into the main conversation, we had plenty of our community from the coalitions. We had Gretchen Daly, who runs the Natural Capital Project in Stanford University. She was on stage. Andre Hoffman, our chairman, was also speaking on several sessions. I did several television interviews about some of this work as well while I was there, as well as running our own session where we looked across. I think quite fascinating, and Louise was helping to deliver all of this as well. We looked across how all of the frameworks that are now coming out all interconnect. Our Act D framework, using that loop that Louise was showing you earlier on, showing how that you need to assess what you're doing first of all, and to do that you need to apply a capitals approach. Then into the commitment work, the science-based targets that are around that are being used to set those commitments and targets. That naturally moves on. I'm sorry, just to show as well, when we did the last mapping of that, around 60 to 70% of the organizations we were working with were then going directly into setting targets. So it's a pathway that we're building here. Then they're going on to the transformation bit. So, and the T of ACT, ACT, assess, commit, transform. So this transforming bit as well, we then have the business for nature work that's going on in many organizations, actually changing the way they work, and then onto the disclosure. And one of the big things that's happened in the last few months is that all of the work that you've been helping us to do, the natural capital work, is now embedded fully in the TNFD, the Task Force for Nature Related Financial Disclosures. That is on a fast track to go into the international standards body, the ISSB, too many acronyms here, I'm sorry, but the International Sustainability Standards Board. That work, TNFD, will go into the ISSB work, and therefore the natural capital work will be embedded as the baseline of disclosures around the world. So if you're already applying this now, you've got a head start, because otherwise it's coming anyway. It's coming anyway. One final thing about Davos, which was really great. This was actually last week. We've been looking at legal requirements because there's lots of levers. Legal requirements about what we should be doing. And one of our organizations, Social Value International, doing some brilliant work here, looking at the Companies Act, first of all in the UK, but also now taking this up to 5 or 6 other countries. We really should be looking at other countries like the UAE as well here. But what they've done is they've looked at the rules that are there. And one of the language, some of the language was true and fair. You have to have a true and fair representation. And they went to some lawyers and asked them, what does that mean? The lawyers came back and said, well, that means you need to include capitals. You need to include the capitals in it if it's true and fair. So we've also not just got these big international agreements saying it, we've not also got the business leaders now leading it. We've also got lawyers now looking at this and saying, actually, you have to apply a capitals approach. So if you're looking for more reasons, I don't think you need them, but Louise is now going to take us through a great example from Holcim, one of the companies that's done a lot of work here, and take you through showing you exactly how that works. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you so much, Mark, for providing us that context. Before going on the case study example and also calling on Sandra here, I don't know if there is any question from the audience in the chat related to what Mark presents.
Hello, hi. Hello, everyone again. Thank you so much, Mark and Louise. We had one comment from Faisal. I think you took that comment, Louise, and responded to it. I think everybody can see that in the chat, hopefully. I'll have one little question that I've prepared earlier, and if anything comes through, of course, we'll ask it. But my question would be, as everybody, as you just highlighted, both Mark and Louise, there's huge challenges and we are behind. But in a world where economic growth often comes at the expense of nature, unfortunately, what advice or how can organizations start to align their practices with the framework of the Capitals Coalition?
An excellent question, and I think. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and that will help us to dovetail into the case study, in which I'll hand over to you, Mark and Louise.
Excellent, Louise. I'll just respond briefly to that. So I think one of the things we've just been looking back over the last few years and all of the different assessments we've had, I think it was nearing 50 last year, different reports from people on integrated capitals in some way. And when we look at all of this, the biggest barrier is the present economic system and the incentives that are in there. $1.7 trillion worth of investments going the other way. So no matter what we're doing, that's a push that's pushing us back the other way. So you're completely right. The present economic system is based around one capital. What we need to be doing is moving that to all 4 of the capitals to have a holistic approach in this. And when we start looking at this, and this is the fascinating thing, you start putting this into mirror accounts, you start applying. It's quite easy, pick up some of the tools we've got that we've already developed in our community, start applying a capitals approach in it. The first thing that people come out with is a better understanding of their own business. They actually understand what they're doing better. They have better governance processes in there. They understand those risks and opportunities. They understand what they've got to do. When you understand all those things, you're going to do a better business anyway. And if you're doing a better business, it's going to be better for your business. It's better for you. It's better for the world as well. So it seems to me it's so obvious that what we need to do is be starting to do these mirror accounts. But then when it starts slipping in to the real accounts, when we start seeing these numbers like we've just started to in the last few weeks, start seeing these numbers appearing on the real balance sheet, that's when we're going to see the transition. I think that's what's coming next, is that balance sheet showing it. And I think Holcim can show us now, Louise, some of those examples, can't they, of how they've actually done the mirroring and how it might then appear in the accounts.
Yeah, exactly. And thank for answering that question, and also happy to talk more about the SIA, so the System of Environmental Accounting, so set up by the UN system. I saw the question on the chat, but that's indeed also a global context who show interest from international organizations to better understand what is natural capital and how government and business can include them better. So on the Holcim case study, I'm really happy to share that with you. If you can go to the next slide, please. Why I'm really happy? Because first of all, I believe in practice, and I believe in the that for business, seeing another real case and how this changed the way they are doing business is the best inspiration you can have, because it can be a mirror to your own organization and what maybe you can achieve where you are. And I always found the power of KCD really strong, so in engaging with business in general. So here we will talk about Holcim Group. I choose this case because they are active in the build sector, so they are a large multinational that mainly produce cement. And I thought that this might be relevant to the context of UAE, and also because they focus on water. And as Huda mentioned at the beginning, yeah, there is a willingness to be attentive to water resource indeed in UAE, and so this is quite relevant. If you can go to the next slide, please. So Holcim, their project, the real case application, the name of that is Implementing a Nature Positive Strategy with Measurable Water and Biodiversity Target. And you can quickly see on the picture what they did for the same space, so the before and after the intervention, bringing back nature into their real operation. So what they are doing and what is the project overview? They have commitment about the progressive transformative rehabilitation of space with fresh water, so fresh water replenishment in water risk area. They have science-based biodiversity target, among other. I will deep dive more into that. And their water stewardship behavior and action is embedded into their own operation, which is the core, indeed, the extraction, you know, for the construction of cement, for the production of cement. But they are also operating beyond site boundaries, which show their interest to engage with the world and with other stakeholders and places where they are not present directly, but where they have indirect linkage, showing also a high responsive attitude. And sustainability indeed is at the core of what they are driving. If you can go to the next slide. So I will present their case in 4 stages, I would say, aligning with the high-level business action on nature, which is a framework established with all different organizations, so TNFD, but also science-based target for nature, also the World Economic Forum, also the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, Capitals Coalition. Indeed, we align that those are the 4 words that business should follow. So assess your impact dependency, measure those, commit to science-based target to be back, to put your company on the track, transform your activities towards avoiding and reducing indeed negative impact, but also restoring and regenerating and transforming business model or strategy for the better, and then disclose that process. Their natural capital assessment was really a pivotal moment for Holcim, because they applied the natural capital protocol some years ago, and it opened the way for their strong sustainability and nature strategy today. So through that process, they possess a strong understanding of the nature-related impact on their own operation, but as I mentioned, also from their supplier and the value chains upstream. So how they assess the impact? They set up a biodiversity indicator and reporting system who monitor all the quarries, so the place where they extract kind of rock for cement. And they use an integrated biodiversity assessment tool aligned with the Natural Capital Protocol to help prioritizing action in high biodiversity area. And near that, in their ESG performance that they are monitoring, they also have a strategy that set up the strategy 2025 about accelerating green growth, and this include biodiversity, water, and natural capital. If you can go to the next slide, please. About the commitment, so they commit to have a freshwater replenishment in water risk area by 2030, acknowledging they're not there yet, but they are on track. They are going towards that direction, showing their good willingness. They want to have a measurable positive impact on biodiversity by 2030 using science-based methodology. Indeed, they want to reduce water stress for the community and also building more water resilience. What are the other options, how we can use better water? And they commit to not open new site or exploration within protected area to avoid any negative impact on biodiversity. They also signed a Business for Nature campaign, make it mandatory last year, to call for assessment to disclose impact and dependency on nature. And this helped the process of getting the agreement of Kunming-Montreal, so the COP15, where in this agreement between many different countries, they are requiring that business will have, it will be mandatory to disclose impact and dependency on biodiversity by 2030. If you can go to the next slide. On transformation, what they are doing practically, so they are implementing nature-based solution to reverse nature loss. They're driving circular construction process to reduce the demand they have on nature and to reuse as much as they can what they have and recycle material. And they are developing biodiversity environmental training module, not only for their own workforce, but also for their supplier. Sorry, there is a typo in supplier. With that, you can go to the last slide. What they do to disclose and be transparent towards the stakeholder. They are an early adopter of TNFD that you might heard about already, and they have an integrated profit and loss statement. One word on that, the integrated profit and loss statement is one of the most advanced application of natural capital assessment in some way, because this bring in the account, social, human, and natural capital, and those are really visible then. They have a sustainability performance report, and they have a review of the materiality impact every year. They have a climate report, and they also disclose data on the impact on nature. It's quite intensive disclosure process, but really being transparent. And if you can go to the next slide, and I will conclude there. This is what an integrated profit and loss account look like. And you can see that they're adding, or they are showing where are the positive and the negative, for example, linked to carbon emission, but also the positive, contribution to employment and so on, to have a more accurate perspective and understanding of the performance. With that, thank you for your attention. You have link on the chat, and Sandra, I hand over to you for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. I thought that was a really informative case study, very helpful in trying to understand how an organization has implemented it. And I hope it's been useful for our audience. We already have one question, and hopefully if we have a few more, please do put them in the chat. So the question that we've received is, given the broad scope of the capital approach, can it effectively address resource depletion, including issues like greenhouse gas emissions? And considering that the TCFD and TNFDs focus on scope 3, how can the capital's approach tackle these aspects and IFRS and other regulatory requirements? That's a question from Faisal Qayyum. Hello, Faisal, from the Environment Agency, Abu Dhabi. Would you, Louise, or Mark, like to take that?
I'll jump in there. Thank you, Faisal. So first of all, TNFD, another announcement at Davos this year, 320 organizations already signed up to apply it. It's built around the same requirements as TCFD. So the 11 TCFD requirements already in there, and then a couple more added on for nature as well. So if you're already doing TCFD, you can do TNFD, but 320 in 4 months is a massive jump. I mean, very, very quick pickup on that. So that's the first thing. And all of the capital's work embedded in it. Your question, though, was about how do we get really into the resource requirements, which is the most important thing here. It's no use just doing lots of disclosures and wonderful disclosures if we're still using all the resources in the wrong way. Well, majority of people that use a capitals approach use it for option appraisal. So what they do is they use it between two resources, looking at the sustainability between them. They look at between two locations and try and decide which is going to have the best or the worst impact within it. That's the most common way of using it. So it's not a disclosure tool, it's actually a decision-making tool about which resources you should use. In the same way that you mentioned the GHG greenhouse gas work, the greenhouse gas protocol, lots of people use that, but then they don't necessarily get information that's useful for decision-making. What they do is they get a set of numbers out of that we produced 1,000 tons of carbon, 1,000 cubic meters of water been used, or whatever it is. And actually converting that into something useful for decision making is exactly what the protocols and the capitals work does. Helps you get down to understand those resources requirements, understand them properly, and make sure you're using them as efficiently as possible. Now, we know there's always going to be impacts, there's always going to be negative impacts and positive, but doing it without understanding those is the problem. Understanding them, then you can start managing them, and then you can start doing something about it. So I think in this case, that the capitals approach is exactly what you're asking for here. It's not a broad scope thing. It's not just a disclosure piece. It's actually getting down into the detail to actually understand how all of these things interconnect. So I think that's the key part of this here, that actually if you had everyone applying a capitals approach in a consistent way, well, actually then the understanding of those resource limitations, those resource uses, etc., would be publicly made public, would be able to be on the boardroom table, that you can discuss them properly, rather than at the moment, which is what happens, is that they're hidden. So TNFD, the disclosure standards, all very important to disclose, but capitals is about the actual decision making around those resources, as you're saying there.
Thank you so much, Mark. We have one more question from the audience. They're all coming through now. So the second question is from our colleague Tanzid. Hello, Tanzid. The question is, using the example of the case study at Holcim, at what point will the implementation of measures help to improve their integrated profit and loss? i.e., how can this help to inject a sense of urgency? Perhaps Louise.
Louise, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you very much for this excellent question. So first of all, the implementation of measure, it's really how they monitor data that will inform the integrated profit and loss account. So for example, on water, how they are measuring the water level will be then translated on how much water they're extracting, on what is the value of that extraction. So it's an additional step. There is further measurement, but then there is a valuation piece, and this is embedded into the integrated profit and loss account. So measurement is really at the core of you need to have a good integrated profit and loss account, and to have to share the understanding that your data are robust. This is really at the core, and there is a lot of demand today about verification and process to make sure that those accounts are, real and really informative, because this is really important as they are in basing decision. About the sense of urgency, I think the real value of getting such an integrated profit and loss account, who are frequently developed more by technical people, economists, or people from sustainability, people from finance team, and so on. These bring the data to the board, to the CEO and the C-suite, and then they can better understand with this holistic, account, where they are doing positive and negative, and where they can improve the overall positive impact. And I think the fact that this is so clearly presented can help really to foster engagement internally. It's also very useful for investor. More and more investor and financial institutions are looking for those kind of information, because they want to direct the green, fund, for example, to those who are really making a positive change. So yeah. This is my answer. I don't know if anyone wants to complement, but I'm also available if you want to know more.
Thank you very much, Louise. I think maybe this is an opportune time to launch our poll. So we have a poll to engage everyone who's attending. If you wouldn't mind, please open your chat. My colleague Mariam will launch the poll there imminently. The question is, to what extent does your organization consider its effects on nature and the well-being of people, where 1 is very low and 5 is very high? Please start to answer.
I almost started filling that in then, but I probably shouldn't, should I? I was just about to press a button, but I won't.
We kind of know what you're going to say.
Yeah, you know where I am, so let's see what everyone else is doing.
I'm holding myself back as well. Good, we're getting good engagement.
This is interesting, isn't it? There's a lot of people around the four mark there that are highly already engaging. Shows the great work you're doing there, Sandra and Heda.
You're very kind, Mark. We'll give credit to the organizations because obviously they're members of the ADSG because they're keen on sustainability.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
which is wonderful.
We cannot see the poll.
Who just spoke?
That's me, Eli from UBS. So we cannot see the poll, unfortunately. Me and my colleagues.
In the chat. You can't see it in the chat.
Not at all. We don't have even chat functionality here, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. If where you just click to speak, there's a little row of icons. One of them looks like a chat box. If you click that, you should be able to see the chat on the right.
I know, but we don't have this functionality.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Perhaps Mariam can help. If you want, I'll happily give my vote to you. Which number would you choose? To what extent does your organization consider its effect on nature and the well-being of people? Would you say very low, low, medium, high, very high?
I think it's high.
High. So I'll go 4. I've submitted my vote on behalf of UBS. Is that correct?
That's correct.
For transparency. Okay, great. All right, I think that's enough for the vote. Any last people who want to vote, please go ahead and do it now before we close it. Thank you very much, everybody. So just as a commentary, as Mark very rightly noticed, about 53% said that they have a high interest and extent to which their organization considers its impacts and effects on nature and people. So that's a very good sign. And also 19 or almost 20% say that it is very, very high. So that's excellent. We're glad that you're here and we're looking forward to your engaging further with us on the Capitals Coalition journey in the UAE. So we have one more question. So I thought we've had some engagement with the audience. We've had some engagement with Mark and Louise. I'd like to maybe direct this question to my colleague Mohammed at the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group. Mohammed, can you share with us what are, for you, the potential advantages from adopting a capitals approach, such as initiating a natural capital assessment? Mohammed, you're on mute.
Sandra, sorry. Okay, in the context of Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group goals, a capital approach aligns with the group commitment to a sustainable business community in the region. The emphasis on capacity building through framework and standard ensures that ADSG members are well equipped to navigate challenges and effectively contribute to sustainable development, as we are aiming businesses to become sustainable for a future to improve transparency and attractive investors. And incorporating capital in decision-making is a central theme of today's discussion. Is embedding natural, human, social, and produce capital into decision-making procedure. Navigating the interact terrain of sustainable demands, a keen awareness of interplay between those diverse capital components, delving into exploring strategies to synchronize these capitals, enhance the wholeness and efficacy of decision-making processes.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's very comprehensive. So I think I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you very much. Oh, do we see something here? Thank you, Mark Louise. Great overview. Would you suggest a bank utilize the capitals framework? As I'm sure you're aware, the majority of impacts are through the financing of our clients, not all of whom are as advanced as the likes of Holcim. Welcome any suggestions on how to start with and case studies. This is from our colleague, Richard Hurst.
Definitely. And we just heard, I think, UBS on the telephone there. They've been doing a lot of work with this. Their paper from last October was very interesting. I think the financial markets are getting much more interested in this. It did start off with corporates, but we're now seeing many more financial institutions. And in fact, an event we did in Paris last year, we had a very high number of financial institutions coming. We've been working very closely with them. It is slightly removed, obviously, and as that's shown in the loop that we showed earlier on, so i.e. it's your own operations as a financial institution, but it's more important to look at the institutions that you're actually financing, be that through insurance, through banking, through whatever means you're working with. But there are some really good leaders in the space, and I think UBS is one of them. So definitely have a look at the work they've got. And we've got many organizations from the financial sector now engaging with us on this area. So very exciting to see that move more into the finance sector.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you so much. And thank you, Richard, for the great question. So I think we're just keeping eye on time. I think we shall wrap it up for questions now. Thank you, everyone, for all of your engagement. We will also appreciate your feedback, as I mentioned earlier. There will be a link in the chat inviting your feedback, which my colleague Mariam will post there. And in conclusion, it's been a privilege to facilitate this talk. It's been a privilege to collaborate with Mark and Louise and Huda and the team and Mohammed and with all of you. And I think I will hand over to Huda to give any closing remarks.
Thank you, Sandra. On behalf of Abu Dhabi Sustainability Group and ADSG team, I would like to thank you all. Thank you, Mark, Louise, for your great presentation, which is greatly appreciated, and especially for our plans for the Natural Capital flagship project. We have a plan, we have a great proposal that is developed and still under development. And we are also looking for collaboration, partnership with our members. And we're also looking forward to have case studies from our region to recognize the efforts for integrating great practices that also help our strategic objective to integrate sustainability governance to achieve impact. And we are looking forward to continue our engagement and partnership on the flagship projects, and invite everyone here who would like to know more about this to call us and to meet with us to develop this collective work together. Thank you all again for your time and your feedback. Really appreciated. So hope to receive your comments on the feedback forms that shared here in the chat box. Thank you again, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the coalition, we also want to deeply thank ADSG and Sustainability to Action, and also the Environmental Agency of Abu Dhabi, who support this webinar. It's a huge pleasure, really, to advance on those important topics in UAE. We hope it opens appetite to learn more, and we are here to support your action and transformative journey. And if you want to know more, please join the flagship program, capacity building program that is coming. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Huda and Andra, specifically.
Thank you, Louise.